Is the apartment still for rent? Good afternoon. Yes, it Island. Can I come by to see it? Of course. Are you planning on living alone? Yes, just me. All right, I'll text you the address. Come by around 5. Got it. Goodbye. Goodbye. I had struck gold. For a while now, I had been thinking about moving out of my parents' house and had been browsing listings, but the prices were depressing, to say the least. I knew that with my income, I could only afford a rundown studio on the outskirts of town, an apartment in an old wooden building, or at best, a room in a dormitory. Honestly, none of those options seemed particularly appealing, but I kept looking, hoping a little luck would come my way, and it seemed like it finally had. I was scrolling through ads when I saw a one-bedroom apartment. Sure, the renovation wasn't the most modern, but it came with all the necessary appliances and furniture. It was a 5-minute walk from the bus stop and wasn't too far from my parents' place. I arrived at 5, just as we had arranged. The landlady, Oksana, was a pleasant woman in her 40s. She quickly showed me around, told me about the neighborhood's infrastructure, and asked when I could move in. Is the price the same as in the ad? I asked. Yes, that's correct. Why is it so cheap? Well, you know, the renovation isn't the newest, which is why the price is what it is, she explained. And the appliances and furniture are old, as you can see. I just shrugged. It seemed strange. Dilapidated apartments were being rented out for the price of royal chambers. But here was this place. Oh well, we'll see. How are the neighbors? They're all decent people, so I'd advise you not to be too loud after 10 p.m. There's just one thing, she began, then hesitated, as if debating whether to continue. What is it? You see, the woman in the apartment across from you is an old lady. She's very old and acts strangely sometimes. Don't be alarmed. She's harmless. It's just best not to interact with her more than necessary. Strange things happen, I said. When can I move in? The sooner, the better. Great. We can sign the contract now, and I'll give you the keys. I quickly read through the contract, handed Oksana the first month's rent, and went back home to get my things. My parents were surprised I was leaving so suddenly, but they didn't object. In fact, they seemed quite happy for me. By 9 p.m., I was sitting in my new kitchen, sipping coffee. Most of my things were already unpacked, so I decided to hell with the rest and just relaxed. Soon, I felt the urge for a cigarette. Oksana had said I could smoke in the apartment, so I went out onto the balcony, flicked my lighter, and took a drag. The quiet courtyard was spread out below my windows. I looked down, glad there was no playground. I wouldn't have to listen to the screaming, shouting, and running of children every time I opened the window. There were just a few benches, and that was it. The benches were empty. Everyone was likely hiding from the heat indoors. For several days, the temperature had been over 6 degrees Fahrenheit, 30 degrees Celsius, a rarity for our region. Surprisingly, I handled the heat relatively well, unlike most of my acquaintances. As I was thinking about how unforgiving July was, I saw an old woman walking through the courtyard. She looked like a typical grandmother, except she was bundled up in what looked like her entire winter wardrobe. People only dress like that in the dead of winter, yet here she was. She wore some kind of hat, a coat, and boots. The sight of it made me feel sick. What a crazy old lady. Wait a minute. What if this was my neighbor, the one the landlady had warned me about? Or was the building full of them? Later that night, I was craving something tasty, but all I had in the fridge was mayonnaise and a bag of frozen dumplings. Definitely not what I wanted. I quickly got dressed and stepped out of my apartment. As soon as I was in the hallway, I came face to face with an old woman. It was the same one who had been walking outside in winter clothes. It seemed her walk was over. I had jumped out right in front of her. "Oh, what are you doing here?" I yelled, startled. The old woman just stared at me but said nothing. Once I was outside, I collected myself. I couldn't understand what had frightened me so much. I returned from the 24-hour store without any further incidents. Overall, I enjoyed living in the rented apartment. I was my own boss. No one told me how to live or what to do. I could sleep until noon, spend all day on my laptop, or have friends over whenever I wanted. The landlady was reasonable. She never came over unannounced and only stopped by when it was important. The other neighbors were sane too. Even the old lady across the hall. At first, I was wary of her, but now I just felt a bit sorry for her. No one ever visited her. She didn't talk to anyone in the courtyard and lived a quiet life. It was obvious she had a screw loose. Sometimes, she would just stand in the building's entrance hall for long periods, doing nothing. I wondered if she had any children. As I said, I felt bad for her. So, whenever I went grocery shopping, I would pick something up for her, too, a box of tea, a packet of cookies, or a carton of milk. I usually met her outside and would hand her the groceries. She would hide her face from me but would always say thank you. Honestly, I wanted to help her more, but I wasn't exactly rich myself. One evening, I was standing by the stove cooking dinner when a noise from the hallway distracted me. It sounded like it was on my floor. Curious, I walked to the door and peeked through the peephole. What I saw made me jump. My neighbor was standing directly in front of my door, staring at it intently. Damn, I just couldn't get used to her quirks. Shaking off the shock, I went back to the kitchen. After I finished cooking, I felt the urge to look through the peephole again. I wondered if she was still there. It was almost funny. In 20 minutes, nothing had changed. She was standing there just as before. Maybe she needed help. With that thought, I opened the door. "Hello, can I help you with something?" The old woman looked at me with a guilty expression and said, "My dear boy, please help an old woman. My television is broken, and I don't have money for a repairman. When my pension comes, I'll pay you what I can. Don't worry about it, Grandma. I can take a look." "Oh, I couldn't possibly. It's no problem at all. Come on, show me what's wrong." "Let's go, dear," she said. When I stepped into her apartment, my heart ached with sadness. The atmosphere was gloomy and depressing. I understood she didn't have money for renovations, but the apartment itself was neglected. The wallpaper was peeling in places, the windows were dirty, and the tulle curtain in the kitchen, which I suspected was once white, was now a dingy gray. There was no sense of comfort here, no potted plants, no brightly colored towels, none of the small touches that make a house a home. I get that money is tight, but still. We went into the living room, and she pointed at an old television in a wooden case. I hadn't seen one of those in 100 years. After about half an hour, I managed to fix it. The neighbor thanked me profusely, then said, "Wait here a moment, I'll be right back," and shuffled off to the kitchen. 5 minutes later, she returned and held out 2 hard candies. "Thank you so much." "No, thank times you times for letting me help. My own children and grandchildren have completely forgotten about me." "So you have children?" "A son, Vanya, and a daughter. They visit once a year for my birthday, and that's it. No calls, no letters." Tears streamed down her face. "Hey, don't cry. I'll come visit you. Just let me know when." "Thank you, dear. You've helped me so much today. You should go home now. Are you sure you don't need anything else?" "I'm sure." Returning home, I immediately called my parents. I felt awful after visiting my neighbor. Did she really deserve to be treated like that? You raise your children, and they just forget about you. But I bet when she's gone, they'll be quick to claim the apartment. Later that evening, my mood lifted. My girlfriend, Katya, texted to say she was coming to visit tomorrow. Due to certain circumstances, we couldn't live together yet, but that was temporary. For now, we made do. She said she could arrive around noon and that I'd need to meet her. I readily agreed and spent the rest of the day tidying up the apartment. For some reason, on my day off, I woke up at 7 a.m. It was probably nerves about our upcoming meeting. I had nothing to do and couldn't get back to sleep, so I took a shower, went to the store, and busied myself with random tasks. I somehow managed to kill the time and finally got her call. She said I could head out to meet her. I got ready immediately and walked out the door. To freshen my breath, I unwrapped one of the candies the old lady had given me and popped it in my mouth. A second later, the candy was on the pavement. The taste was absolutely vile. I wondered how old they were. What garbage. Still, that unpleasant moment couldn't ruin my mood. Katya and I decided to go to my place first and then make plans for the day. A couple of hours later, as we stood on the threshold of my apartment, I suddenly felt unwell. My vision blurred and my legs gave out. I squatted down, clutching my head. "Hey, what's wrong?" Katya asked, concerned. "I don't know. I just suddenly feel sick. Can you stand?" "Yeah, I think so." I went into the room and lay down on the couch. Because of that strange episode and how I was feeling, the entire weekend was a write-off. Katya and I didn't go anywhere. We just stayed at home. Still, I was grateful for her company. I wasn't scheduled to go back to work yet, so I had another week or two to rest. For the first 3 days, I barely got out of bed, surviving on food delivery. When I started feeling a bit better, I began taking short walks in the courtyard. One day, while sitting on a bench, I ran into Aunt Toma, my neighbor. Noticing me, she walked over. "My dear, what happened to you? I see you haven't been leaving the house." "I don't know. I've just been feeling awful. I was in bed for 3 days, just trying to get back on my feet now." "Oh my," she gasped, wringing her hands. "Just like that, you felt sick?" "Oh, what is the world coming to?" she asked, then quickly turned her head away. Just before she turned, I could have sworn I saw a smirk flash across her face. I must have imagined it. "Come over to my place, dear. I'll make you some tea, give you something to eat. You're probably wasting away." I had absolutely no desire to visit my neighbor, but I didn't have the heart to refuse out of politeness. I figured half an hour wouldn't kill me, and besides, her own family never visited. She seemed to liven up as soon as I arrived and began setting the table. "Here, eat up," she said, placing a plate of vermicelli on the table. In the center sat a heel of rye bread, and a kettle was starting to boil on the stove. That was the entire meal. Tea without sugar, bread, and plain pasta. A wave of unease washed over me. "Aunt Toma, let me order some delivery for you." "Oh, don't be silly. Why would you do that? You can have some real food." The old woman looked at me with such sadness. "Don't offend me, dear. I tried my best to cook for you." I felt sorry for her all over again. I silently ate the cheap pasta. It was disgusting, a bland, slimy, cold concoction. God, how was I going to finish this? Suddenly, the sky outside darkened. Was a storm rolling in? I didn't remember seeing rain in the forecast. The abrupt change in weather made me dizzy. I clutched my head with one hand, and my other hand dropped the fork with a clatter. They warned me she was crazy. The skin around her eyes seemed to darken. I blinked, trying to clear my vision, telling myself it was just the lighting. "Is it tasty?" she asked in a creaky voice. I mumbled, trying to chew. Suddenly, I felt something wrong in my mouth. A movement, Without thinking, I spat the white mush onto the table. From the moist, chewed-up lump, several huge white larvae wriggled out. What the hell? Had this pasta been sitting around since the 90s? Meanwhile, the old woman burst into laughter. I just stared at her blankly. A few seconds later, I noticed movement in my peripheral vision. The worms. The entire plate was filled to the brim with disgusting white worms and larvae. They squirmed and crawled over each other, writhing sickeningly. Instantly, the entire contents of my stomach ended up on the floor. That crazy bitch. First, she gives me candy that must have been pre-war, and now she tries to feed me worms. And how could I not have noticed? "What's the matter, dear? Don't you like it?" she asked, her voice dripping with mockery. "Go to hell," I snarled. Now I get why your kids never visit. Ordinarily, my statement should have offended her, or at least angered her, but she just laughed even harder. All right, I had to get out of there, and then I needed to get to a hospital after a meal like that. While the insane woman was laughing her head off, I backed into the hallway, put on my shoes, and glanced back at her. The old woman stood up from the table and began walking quickly toward me. I don't know why, but a sense of dread washed over me. Panic took hold. I ran down the corridor, my mind racing, trying to figure out what to do. The only thing I could think of was to hide in one of the rooms. I yanked open a door, ran inside, and slammed it shut. Luckily, there was a latch. I slid it into place just as heavy blows began to rain down on the door. "You won't get out of here. Do you hear me? You won't get out," she raged from the other side. I tried to think of a way out. Calling the police wasn't an option. They'd take too long. Going out to face that old woman was terrifying. Who knew what was in her head? I didn't think the owner of that voice was even human anymore. The door shuddered under the assault. A little more, and that thing would be in here with me. I scanned the room and realized there was nothing to barricade the door with. Damn it, what do I do? Was jumping out the window my only option? It was terrifying. This was the 5th floor. Wait, what was that? At first, I hadn't noticed what was wrong with the room. It was bare of furniture, but that's not what unnerved me. The walls were covered in what looked like icons, but they weren't icons at all. They were grotesque images of disfigured faces. Horrific grimaces were painted on each one, and above their heads were crosses, but they were all upside down. I wouldn't be surprised if this old hag painted them herself. A loud crack from the door jamb snapped me out of my daze. "Stay!" it roared. It was no longer a woman. From the old lady, not a trace remained. Blood-eaten lips, disproportionately long and twisted teeth, eyes as black as tar. That's the last thing I remember. The sharp smell of ammonia forced my eyes open. The bright light was painful, and I squinted shut. "He's awake," a voice said from right above me. "Young man, how are you feeling?" "What happened?" "Don't make any sudden movements. You fell from a 5th floor window. You have a spinal injury," a paramedic informed me. Later, I was taken to the hospital. There, they told me I had a compression fracture of the spine, a concussion, and numerous bruises and contusions. I couldn't process what had happened. I tried to blame it on sleepwalking, a bad dream, hallucinations, anything but the chase with the creature living in the apartment next door. My parents visited me that same day. The next morning, Oksana came. I had been expecting her. We had to sort things out with the apartment and the contract, or so I thought, until I saw her. Oksana looked gaunt and wouldn't meet my eyes. Her guilty expression confused me, so I spoke first. "Hello." She looked at me sadly and whispered, "Forgive me. I probably never should have rented out that damn apartment." "What's wrong?" I asked, concerned. Tears welled up in her eyes. She wiped them with her palms, trying to say something, but her voice broke every time. I waited patiently, saying nothing. After a few minutes, she managed to compose herself. Staring out the window, she finally spoke. "You probably have a right to know. I bought that apartment for myself 5 years ago. The price was significantly lower than the market average. People warned me that there was a reason the price was so low, but I didn't listen. It all started in the first few days after I moved in. The old woman from the apartment across the hall would just stand on our landing, scaring me to death. At first, I thought she was just senile, but after one incident, I realized it was much worse than it seemed. That same neighbor tricked me into coming to her apartment one day. She claimed she was feeling ill and needed me to wait with her for the ambulance, saying she didn't know if she'd make it until they arrived. Like a fool, I agreed and went inside. She told me to go into the bedroom, and when I got there, the power in the apartment suddenly went out. I was about to go to the hallway to check the circuit breaker when I felt cold fingers wrap around my neck. I couldn't breathe. I tried to scream, but only a hoarse gasp came out. I don't know how I managed to break free. I ran blindly through the apartment, fumbling in the dark. I found the front door with my forehead, but it was locked. I yanked the handle again and again, but it was useless. Of course, I screamed for help. A neighbor heard my cries and called out. At that moment, I felt a sharp, unbearable pain in my leg. I fought back, but it was impossible to see anything in the dark. The pain kept coming from different places, and over time, I grew weaker. Then, I lost consciousness. It turned out the neighbor had called the police. When they broke down the door, they had to call an ambulance too. That sweet-looking old lady had stabbed me several times. I needed a blood transfusion. They had her committed, and she was in a mental institution for, I don't remember how long. I moved out right after that, and the apartment stood empty for several years. About a year ago, I thought about selling it, but it was like that neighbor could sense it. Every time I brought potential buyers, she would immediately cause a scene, putting on a one-woman show. So, I gave up on that idea and decided to rent it out. You were the first person to respond. I didn't think anything would happen to you. I mean, you're a guy. I thought if anything happened, you could defend yourself. How did it come to this? Oksana, I said flatly. She's not exactly human. What are you talking about? The landlady asked, stunned. I told her everything that had happened to me and why I was lying in that hospital bed. She listened intently, then quickly said her goodbyes, promising to visit the next day. But I didn't see her the next day, or the day after. Instead, my parents called to say they had collected all my things from the apartment. A large sum of money from Oksana was deposited into my bank account. Sorry, the message accompanying the transfer read, "You won't have to go back to that apartment again."